evening, everybody. I'm very pleased to see you all. Usually, it's usually the usual suspects, but every now and then we do see some new faces, and we welcome you. These town hall meetings are very effective, at least for us, because it allows us to learn more about what we do every day. This board has been working very hard to develop the budget that we will operate with for the coming year, and of course our budget year will begin on November 1st. The format for this evening will be that, actually this will be the last time I have to talk. Michael Bartholomew, our general manager, will do a brief presentation to orient us about what our budget's going to look like. And then Ross Carnes will take over and serve as the MC, if you will, and he'll give you some ground rules for how we'll conduct the interaction. So without further delay, I'd like to then ask Michael Bartholomew to begin the evening.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're going to give you kind of a high-level view of where we're at with the budget. This budget is not completed. We still have some work to do on the budget. And so let me go through it and explain why we still have some work yet to do on the budget. Here are some of our general assumptions going into the budget. We expect our revenues to go up 1.5%. And again, these numbers may change when you get to the bottom because we may have to increase our revenue streams. We expect a net increase of 25 memberships up to 3,066. Real estate activity remaining strong. Building activity which is consistent with the prior year. We've had a lot of resales this year. And we hope the lake level continues at a near full level for the year. For our labor, taxes, and benefits, the parameters overall increase of 6.5% includes a 2.5% merit pool increase. We do not offer health insurance for our employees because at some point a few years ago it became unsustainable at $1,000 per employee per month. So we offer another benefit package that does not have health insurance, so we have to pay the ACA penalty every year. Filling all vacant positions, and as has been requested, we want to add one in housekeeping, one grounds employees, and one maintenance position to help maintain our current assets. Our expenses, overall increase of 5.6%. Our general insurance premium, that's our whole insurance package, went up about 7%. A couple of years ago, you might remember the wind and hail damage we had on the roof. That turned out to be $1 million claim, and so now the insurance company is raising our rates, obviously, to make up for that claim. But we are well insured. Wildlife management, $75,000. That's down from $100,000 last year, which was the budget last year. We expect about a 5% increase in our YMCA lifeguard contract, which has served us very well through the years. Very pleased with the YMCA. Cost increases for paper and other consumables. We expect our expenses to rise about 3% every year. And repairs to our aging facility and infrastructure. This building is old. It needs repairs on an ongoing basis, and we have to keep it maintained. And here's what the roll-up looks like. And first of all, the member assessments, the 25 members. So we'll have, by the end of the year, $3.3 million in member assessments. And other income, that's all the departmental income. So when you add all the departmental income together, along with all of our fees, the total operating revenue, $6.8 million. On a forecast this year of $6.7 million, 1.5% increase. And that's an area where we're going to look really hard. If you look at the bottom, first of all, gross operating profit, you can see $102,000 over this year. And then our labor taxes and benefits going up 6.5%, like I said, expenses going up 5.6%, and total operating expenses 6.2%. And so the issue we have right now is we have a deficit budget of $115,000. And so we're working very hard to look at revenue streams to increase the revenues. We obviously don't want to cut expenses, so we're looking at ways that we can raise revenue that will not adversely affect the entire membership. And so that's where we're at now. We have some work to do, but the staff is working diligently to get us to a break-even budget.
I believe that you don't want to cut services.
Correct. Yeah, we're looking to raise revenues, not cut services or expenses. Here's our capital budget for the roads and drainage next year. $345,000 in drainage. Repair of damaged areas, $330,000. And microsurfacing of some of our roads at $172,000. Total budget for roads and drainage, $847,000 at this point. And we don't anticipate any changes to that. With our capital budget, this is certainly a work in progress, and we will have some changes to this, but this is where we're at as we sit here today. Some of the larger items I'll mention, a couple projects from coming out of the House and Food and Beverage Committee. Magnolia Bluebonnet renovations. We'd like to put a dividing wall, or actually take down the wall that's in there and put a dividing wall so that we could have more space for larger functions, and we could seat up to possibly 40 people in there at one time. And if there's 2 car groups or a larger car group, and then just shut the wall when it's not in use. All the restrooms on the second level, $75,000. If you've been in them, they're in need of restoration. Our copier upstairs, we've ran over 1 million copies through that copier, and it's definitely on its last legs. A couple, the bunker liners, they have about a 5-year life cycle. The golfers in the room will know that we're at the point where it's a safety issue. If the bunker liners are exposed and somebody hits it really hard, they could hurt the wrist. So our bunker liners need to be replaced. And so we have that on our capital budget. We do a tremendous amount of chipping, and the chipper that we have is undersized and can't, we've welded it, Danny's welded it just about as many times as he can. And so it is a big number, but we need a larger chipper and something that can handle the enormous amount of volume of limbs and logs that we get down at the recycle center. Skid steer, a piece of equipment that we use every day. It's like a big Bobcat. We want to replace that. West Circle improvements. You can see that project has been started. Rain has hampered that for the next few days. Security buildings, that is both gates and the building at both gates and the security building, just a little freshening up. Nothing's been touched to those areas, well, at least for the last 15 years. Some of the other items there, $75,000 club pool replaster. That is a necessity at this point. We're getting, we have a Fibertech product, and it's definitely time to replaster that pool, so you'll be seeing that happening pretty soon. We also have a light project that we're going to do in conjunction with that, but that's quite a big number, $75,000 there. The PAC playground, you'll see that number going down. We've decided to go with another material than was originally spec'd, so that number will go down in the range of $20,000. So just a high level, our total capital's $775,000. We bring in about $1 million a year, and that's from 2 sources. All the initiation deposits that everybody pays when they become a member, and $8 per month of a monthly assessment. And it's right at $1 million a year. So we have $775 and $20,000 of new capital with a balance of $29,300. And so that gives you just an overview of our budget, where we're at today. Again, we have some work to do, and we'll be working diligently on that. And at this time, I'd like to talk about some future potential capital. None of these projects have been approved, and we don't have the money in our capital asset reserve fund for these projects. So you can see the list there. All these items will have to be funded through the membership, through an assessment increase, because right now we don't have the money. Or the other option would be to take all of our replacement things that need replacing and push them out, which is obviously we can't do. We have to maintain our current facilities. So the big ticket items, Pro Shop, 19th hole renovation, $1.7 million. Again, let me emphasize, none of these have been approved. They're going through the camp process, and both the committees and the board and the finance committee are reviewing these projects. Ballroom, river room expansion. We would like to take the ballroom out this way and the river room about 30 feet so we can accommodate larger groups. Would be greatly utilized. Brazos patio. We're kind of in a lack of space in the bar area, so the idea is to close in the Brazos patio. Probably still have an opportunity to open it up when the weather's nice, but it would give us another dining option for those busy nights in the Brazos room. Marina building renovation, obviously the marina building and store needs renovation, so that's the design phase. That does not include any construction, obviously, for whatever plan the Marina Committee, Long-Range Plan Committee comes up with. Tennis court number 7, submitted by the Sports and Rec, and I might add all these have been submitted by our committees, projects that they'd like to see happen based on input from residents and the committees. 7th tennis court, we have 6 right now. Very actively used tennis program. We have a lot of great tennis activities, and we'd like to build a number 7 tennis court. Pack pool shade, that's a smaller number, $18,000, but we'd like to provide some shade out to Pack pool at some point. The tennis center, we really haven't done any renovation to the tennis building for quite some time. Years ago, that used to be where the ambulance was parked, way back in the old days, but it was converted to the tennis building. So you can see we have some money for construction and design. Renovation of our river parks and playgrounds. We're going to start with the Pack playground, and then we're going to look at all of our other parks and really take a look at what we need to do using the designer. Should we renovate each of those parks? Should we create a master park? Just what should we do to take care of our parks, and especially the Pack park? That will be our main park. Pickleball has become an extremely popular sport. Now, we have a very active pickleball association, and they would like to have outdoor pickleball courts to the tune of $110,000. So all these are working their way through the camp process, and then at some point they'll be prioritized, and then so you'll get some more information as we go through the camp process. And so that wraps up my quick overview, and I turn it over to Ross Carnes to open up the question and answer session of the meeting.
Okay, we on? On now? Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. I'm getting the okay from the back of the room. First of all, I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. I think it's important to understand that this is not a meeting that we have typically done while we're in the middle of the budget process. As we started working through the budget last year, we felt it was important for members to have some input into what we're looking at. This is a complex process. This is a $7 million corporation that we're running. I told Michael he's not really the general manager, he's the mayor of a small city in Texas, and with all the expenses and things to go along with it. So we felt it was important for the membership to have an idea to see what we're working on, what the process is, and to better understand where we're going. This evening, I've got a few questions. If you have questions, I would just ask that you go to the back of the room and fill out one of these little question and answer sheets. We're going to allow you 2 minutes to ask your question, give us time to respond, and we will be done here by 7:30 or earlier if nobody has any questions. So before we do that, I asked Beverly, Michael referred quite a few times to the camp process, and I think it'd be maybe important so everybody understand what the camp process is. It isn't something that we do with the Boy Scouts on weekends. So.
Not exactly. The camp process is a process that we have developed over the course of the past 4 years in long-range planning to work with committees who want to have new projects come before the board. And in the past, we really haven't had a succinct way to do that, and so things have just kind of come to the attention of the board, and sometimes they just die for lack of interest, and other times they just aren't being pushed one way or the other. So starting when Ray Lewis was chair of the long-range planning and myself now as chair of the long-range planning, we have worked very hard, our committee has worked very hard to put together a process that begins with, number one, a committee or an individual deciding that they want something new out here in Pecan that doesn't exist, or maybe they want something that does exist, but they want it to look and feel different. An example is the 19th hole in the golf shop. That's a really good example of where a committee said, we want that to have a different functionality than it has right now, and we want to accommodate where we are in 2000s, on the 1970s. So that process starts with the committee filling out part one of that form, and that is really just a high-level overview of what the project is, a brief idea of the scope of the project, an approximate cost, because at this point in time, no costing has been done to do in part one, but it's just to put it into our long-range planning database. It goes to Michael, it goes to the general manager, who will validate the validity of that project, ask questions, make sure that it's, if there's any assets that are covered in that process through the Capital Asset Reserve Fund, that those are noted, so that if there's money available that is applicable to that project, then it's going to be used accordingly. And then they are asked to fill out part two of that form, and that's where you really get into the detail of what the project is going to look like. Who's it going to impact? What are the final costs going to be for this? That then goes to the Finance Committee, who will bend it every which way to make sure it's a valid proposal, that there is finance available for it, or if there's not finance available for it, how it's going to be financed. And then at that point, if it can go back and forth several times, but then it finally comes back to the Long-Range Planning Committee for further work with that project, and then we get with the board and we talk about that project to see if it's going to move forward. The last 2 weeks, the Long-Range Planning Committee has looked at all of the camp projects that we've received Part 1s on, and we prioritize those from a high, medium, and low perspective. The board did the same exercise last week, and so this coming week, the board and the Finance Committee will be getting together to talk about the projects that are on that list to see if we want to go forward with that, and if so, what is it going to cost. So there's a lot of work involved, and the committees that put these camps and bring them forward very dedicated to the project. So we want to work real hard to see if we can make them happen. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. President, I think can I speak? Yeah, good. Thanks. Listen, you're hearing all these things about all this money that's being proposed to be spent, and you have to ask yourself, where's that money going to come from? That's the problem, and I think that Doug Green has probably got the best handle on that. And Doug, could you elaborate on our capital fund? Because a lot of this stuff is not going to be able to be funded, so it's a matter of priorities and what we can afford. But Doug has a roadmap for the next 5 years, and he can probably tell you that in 2 minutes. Doug?
Just briefly, and Michael talked about it in passing there, but we have a capital reserve fund that was set aside specifically for repair and maintenance of the facilities that we have here. And that capital reserve fund is exactly for that. If there is excess funds in that pot, then it's a possibility we might use that fund for additional amenities like pickleball courts or maybe another tennis court. But the fund is set up specifically to maintain what we have today. And so we're doing our best to preserve that fund. We manage it, and even long-range planning is on board monitoring that fund. And we look to see what the status of that fund is. And a good example is because some of the renovations we want to do on the clubhouse, it's not renovations, but stuff we have to do, like the fryers needs to be replaced. So there's just a lot of equipment like coolers and refrigerators that are just worn out, that have to be replaced. So this year, looking downstream in 2022, we were going to go negative because we also have on that golf course irrigation that needs to be done sometime in the future. So we took a look at that, and we basically, Michael and Michael Underwood are working together to reprogram to look at how we can fix that fund. So we are solvent, and we will remain solvent, and so it's very important that we do that. So we're kind of looking at, when we buy new assets now that aren't on that capital asset fund, we want to make sure we're not taking money out of that pot. And so we're looking at only buying new assets, and this is a proposal we're working through the system right now, but use only excess operating capital. Now this year it looks like we're going to wind up with over $100,000. Last year we had $74,000. Looking back over the last 6 years, we've had a surplus every year. So there are funds available to do things like pickleball courts. But we're working really hard at that. And all these new items on the camp list, we will have to, before any of those get approved, we'll have to identify funding for it. And it means we go back to the membership and ask for vote and ask for support and maybe even ask for dues increase. And so we're not just spending your money. We're monitoring it just as closely as we can to keep this community healthy, viable, and financially solvent.
One of the things I was just pointing out that I forgot to explain what CAMP stands for, but it's the Capital Asset / Modification Process. There we go. Thank you, Mr. Pike.
Thank you.
Okay, I haven't been inundated with questions so far, but if you have questions, if you'd fill out one of these at the back of the room, give them to us. The first question I received is from Glenn Schwarzkopf. Glenn, if you want to talk about this, you've got 2 minutes.
I don't speak before. Is this on or not?
Should be. It is.
Okay.
Speak right into it.
Speak right into it.
Recently, the golf committee proposed to y'all, the board, a $5 increase in our trail fee. And it was explained that money would be designated for herbicide and improvement, around the golf course. My question is, how do you guarantee that to the golf committee or golfers that our $5 per month, which is about $4,500 a month, $54,000 a year, is going to be above and beyond Michael Underwood's budget for herbicide and killing all the weeds and stuff we have growing around this course?
Okay, thank you. I'll give a try to that if anybody else wants to add in. When we take the member dues, a portion of the member dues goes to golf and other things. Those all go into the same funds, basically, and it's allocated by department to spend those monies. The budget that we're going to give to Michael next year on the golf course is going to be whatever we've raised in terms of revenues that is designated to go to the golf course, and the money that we raise from this will also go to the golf course. Now, I'm not going to be able to tell you that your $5 this month went to Michael to buy herbicide, but the intent is that that money will go to Michael Underwood's overall budget to continue to maintain the golf course, put whatever he needs to use it for.
So say his budget is $620,000 this year. Next year, his budget's going to be $674,000. It's not going to be reduced.
No, right now, he's going to spend, Michael Underwood with labor and expenses, about $615,000.
Okay, so next year will be $704,000.
Next year will be $652,996.
No, that doesn't compute, because we're adding $54,000 in additional trail fee. So where's the other $50,000 going? And you can't answer that, because it goes in the general fund. We want that money, that $5 a month, to go to directly what he's asking for herbicide, $54,000 a year. It should be $704,000 a year.
Okay.
Then Bobby, address that.
Well,
All right, this year's golf course budget $613. Next year's budget $654. Okay, so the increase did come. Now, we had a great winter this last year, so I had to reduce green fees and everything, and the excess money that was left over from the operations as I pulled back all went back to golf. So we had a $38,000 surplus. It's not 54 grand, by the way, but we had a $38,000 surplus, and we put it back into the golf course budget. So we didn't require any more dues dollars to raise his budget to $650. It's all being refunded because we need to increase the golf course budget. We're getting slammed. Most facilities are in the $8 to $1 million expense, and they're not at this point. We're not anywhere close. So he does an outstanding job with the money he gets. We get compared to Nutcracker, they spend $820. So we've got to continue to grow that golf budget, but right now there are no dues dollars that we can increase that budget with.
Yeah, we think it's important that golfers pay for the one asset that they use and nobody else does, and one way to continue to maintain that is for the golfers to pay for it. We've got a huge project coming up down the road, and we're talking about a $5 a month increase in cart fees. We're looking at a $1.7 million irrigation project that we have to figure out how to pay for in the next 3 years. Without that irrigation project, our golf course may not be as nice as it is today. I don't think it's going to deteriorate, but it's a project that we need to continue to work on. Percy Hayes, I believe that's the name. Did you want to ask a question, Percy? I actually had, let me answer your first question. You said security checks on new hires. We don't do security checks, but we do background checks. We do criminal background checks on all employees. Does that answer that question? Maybe.
Yes, that answers one of them.
Okay, and I gave the other two questions to Michael.
Yeah, because heretofore, no one really knew about background checks and the people that we keep hiring and have hired, where are we getting them from, and what are the conditions we're getting them under. And no one has ever admitted that we're doing background checks or they didn't know it. So you're saying we do background checks?
Yes, sir. We do criminal checks on all employees.
Okay. Criminal checks on everybody that we hire?
Correct.
All right. Then my other question is along those lines. On employees, how many full-time and part-time employees do we have, and what department do they report to?
Michael?
I can help you with that. First of all, we have 8 department managers. Security manager, which is Ty Harper. He has 12 full-time and 8 part-time individuals working for him. His responsibilities are the patrols, the gates, and the office staff. Roads and Grounds is Daniel Van Patten. He has a total of 16 people that work for him. He's in charge of a lot of departments. ACC has 1 employee in it. Our current facilities maintenance, we only have one employee now, and so we're going to hire another one, probably bring it over from grounds. We're in dire need of another maintenance person, but we want to get that up to 3, and you saw that on the screen. We have 5 people that work on the roads to maintain our 56 miles of roads. 7 people on the grounds crew, with the addition of that one person, and that's to maintain 300 acres of common property throughout the entire pecan plantation. We have one individual that takes care of our clubhouse grounds and our tennis grounds, and he's dedicated to this area. And we were able to finally hire somebody to take care of the 35 acres at the PAC. We thought it was really important to have one person to take care of that whole 35-acre complex, and we hired him in May, and so that constitutes Daniel Van Patten's staff. Communications, IT, David Jeffries has 2 people in his department. Communication publications done by Dale Davis, our columns, I think he does a great job. You all see the work that he does. And our information technologies, Mr. John Jacobs. Clubhouse manager, John Thomas, and this is somewhat deceiving because we have a lot of part-time people in food and beverage. John's in charge of the kitchen, the food and beverage service, catering, member services, the reception, housekeeping, and the marina. And housekeeping is one area that we want to go up to 5 full-time employees. In that department, currently 27 full-time and 47 part-time. But again, those are a lot of people that rotate through. Bobby White, our golf professional, 2 full-time, 7 part-time. Bobby's in charge of the pro shop, the driving range, and of course the play. Golf course, we have 8 full-time employees, 7 full-time employees, 3 part-time, and 3 seasonal. And that's Michael Underwood is obviously in charge of the golf course. Sports and recreation, 3 part-time, 11 full-time employees. Keith, I'm sorry. 3 full-time, 11 part-time, Keith Casterlin is in charge of that department. That includes tennis, the activity center, the pool operations for both pools, campgrounds, the parks, and the stables. And finally, our controller, Jana Shevsky, 5 employees, membership, accounts payable, accounts receivable, payroll, and human resources. And that comprises our staff as we are here this evening.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I have one last question that just came up. When's somebody going to train Ty Harper to do his job? That's an embarrassment.
That's it.
Mr. President, Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
Can I say something? Sure. Listen, I'd like to address a little bit what Glenn was talking about, the trail fee money going into the general fund, all right? If you look at it from the big picture here, we're talking about a $6.8 million budget, right? We get revenues from 2 different places. We get them through operations, throughout our sales operations, and through assessments. In the breakdown, without getting too down into the weeds, it's about 50-50. Half of our revenues come from assessments, half of them come from our internal operations. There's only one fund that we operate from, and that's the general fund. So everything that goes into operations goes to the general fund. That separates your assessment that you pay every month for the capital reserve fund and also for the roads fund. Those are separate funds. They have different bank accounts. So that's how that's managed. So there's no other place to put that trail fee but in the general fund. So you have to rely on the budget, and you have to rely on the checks and balances on the everyday operations that money is going to go to the golf course. And we kind of take a look at that. Well, we try. Let me put it that way. Okay. Anyway, that's my take on cash. So it's the cash, in my opinion, is well controlled. The bank accounts. You know, you do get your annual audit at the end of the year. Basically, that's like that annual audit reconciles the financial statement. It's kind of like you people every month when you reconcile your bank accounts and your cash accounts. It's that kind of deal. So we have a pretty good handle on that. Now, is it 100% perfect? I don't think so, but we're working on it. Okay.
Renee Culver, you had a couple questions?
Thank you, first of all, for having it open like this for the members. I really appreciate it. I'm sure all these people here do as well. And I think it's a great idea to have it open for us, and so we can come before you and you guys can explain things to us and take time doing that. It's really helpful. And my questions are very minor, but you probably, everybody else knows this. We're new here, so I don't know. Is there a way to get a copy of like the budgets and the reports and things like that for members, and how do we do that?
Okay, this budget is not finished. We've got, we were supposed to wrap this budget up next week, and we're probably going to be, we have to get it wrapped up by the end of October, but we've got a lot of meetings to go before we get to an agreement on approving this budget. At the point that the budget is approved, it will be on the website. You'll be able to go in and look at it. In November, we're actually launching a new website that should make it easier for members to navigate, to find things. And, we will provide the financials every month. We'll provide the monthly financials, the budgets on there, important information regarding rules and regulations, our policies and procedures are all going to be are on the website now and will continue to be on the website. You had another question about the surplus?
Yes.
Before you go that, I just
Sorry.
would mention to you and anyone else that has that kind of a question, this is your organization, so you have access to everything except for some certain personnel matters that need to be kept confidential for the privacy of the individual. But you should never be denied any information that is part of our organization. And anybody in this room that has that question, you should never feel intimidated from asking if you have a question about that. It's your organization. This belongs to you.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I think I'd like to add something to this. And this should give, the members a little bit of, confidence that the reason the budget is late this year, it's because it's being challenged. Probably more challenged than it has been in the last few years. And I think it's a credit to this new board of directors here, because I'm telling you what, you ought to be sitting in these budget meetings, and they have been tough and it's been a long week for us. So, take that, and it should give you a little bit of confidence that your money is being well spent.
Take my word for it. I'd be happy to trade places with you if you want to sit in for me.
I want to trade as well.
Yeah, Bev wants to trade too. Thank you, Renee.
Well, my
Sure.
other question was just about when y'all were mentioning the surpluses from last year and the one we had this year, and then you were talking about these large projects coming up. Isn't it possible that we can save that money and then use and like have that growing towards to supply those things, or is there something where we do with those monies and funds at the end where we don't have them available? I just didn't know if we have a surplus, then where does it go?
If there was surplus, it's in the general fund, and it will be carried over to the next year. All right.
Oh, okay.
And Doug just told you that we are proposing, and this is what is so difficult in his budget, to set up a special fund to put that surplus in and earmark it to cover these capital projects that we're doing.
That'd be great.
But again, to emphasize on how we have challenged this management on this budget, we have how many managers sitting back there? Every one of them came before the board, and you ask them if they were challenged. And every one of them will tell you that they had to justify every penny that they were spending this year. So that's a credit, number one, to not only our management, but to this board of directors to have, the courage to go ahead and push ahead and shove. But the dollars are being handled, you have some few people on here that are watching over that.
Right. Thank you.
There's something else, too, I would point out, that we have management that has been very industrious in finding ways to increase revenue and manage our expenses without reducing services. And so, I mean, that's the challenge that we have. And so when we have a small surplus in our budget, it's a reflection of that we have good management here, and our managers in the back, and Mr. Bartholomew up here has been doing a good job. Continually challenged, and we won't let them rest, but I think it's a reflection of that your organization's in good hands right now.
I think one of the things just to add is that the budget meetings were done jointly with the Finance Committee and the Board. And the Finance Committee, under the leadership of Bob Zemsky, is really a vital part of managing and controlling the dollars and how they're spent here. They keep a careful and close watch, and it looks like Mr. Z wants to say something.
Wait, don't start talking, you get to the mic.
I'm concerned about the concern of having so much surplus. Let me tell you, as far as our operation fund is concerned, if you don't have some surplus, you're going to realize a sooner increase in your assessment. The reason being is our assessment has been pretty static for the past 5 years. But if you look at our costs, they have been rising about 3% a year. So it's going to catch up. And as far as the excess revenue we got, it's primarily in the area of your capital, okay? We have experienced more growth than we anticipated, and the resales out here have been phenomenal this year. Whereas we were anticipating about a 5.5% increase in resales based on our present 3,035 people, it has jumped up tremendously. I think it was 216, 250 all-time record. So when I look at it from my position, what we're doing is really taking that excess.
You are Chair of Finance.
I'm sorry, yes. Amongst other things. Now you made me lose my train of thought.
But every time we do a transfer, there's a fee. What he may have forgotten to tell you, that then when a current home is sold, that transaction includes a $1,100,
about a $3,900 fee.
$1,139 fee that goes into our budget. So when more and more of those homes are sold, then that's where that money increase comes from.
Right, and basically that increase that we have experienced is covering a lot of the overages in our capital fund that we've had. We had some major overages. Look at the marina. It was originally budgeted for about $30,000. It came in at $145,000. That's one example. I'm not going to go through all of them. But anyway, I hope this helps you with the excess in our operating fund. We have no real excess in our capital funds. That's planned out.
Bob, don't go away, just one moment. I'd just like to clarify just something that you just said, Bob, that $3,900 transfer fee doesn't go in a budget. It goes into a
we have
fund.
Basically three funds. We have an operation fund, okay, that gets their money from your monthly assessment. And excuse me, we have two capital funds. One is for roads and bridges, that in your assessment, $19 goes into the roads and bridge drainage fund. Huh?
Drainage, yeah.
19.
19, correct me. I keep thinking in 2024, 10,000 is going to go away. So folks, get ready. The third fund that we maintain is the capital reserve, where the initiation fee and resale fees go into, plus $8 of your monthly assessment.
And actually,
capital reserve.
$3,200 is the initiation fee, and that goes into the capital reserve. There's about $700 of transfer fee, and that goes into the operational budget.
Yeah, there's all kinds of other fees that go into our operation, anything from the marina to catering service, a multitude of other.
One more thing, Bob, I'd like to add to Bob here. Bob,
this is not my meeting.
No, let me just say one thing here. I'm the representative of the board on the Finance Committee. I can assure you that we are fortunate to have a guy of Bob Zimsky's caliber, a banker, in that committee. And the people that comprise that committee are very outstanding people who really understand the finances of this corporation. So when you go home to bed tonight, be assured that Bob Zinsky over there is taking care of the purse strings of this place.
No, we had other words for Bob this week, but we'll let that go. If you're confused right now, join a lot of people here. This is a complex operation that we have. We do the best we can with a volunteer board and volunteer committee chairs to do the work to make sure this place is solvent. I would like to recognize the department managers that are here. They have a tough job. You know, we beat them up every chance we get, and when we're not beating them up, you beat them up. And I think they do a great job of putting the budget, and I like to recognize the hard work that they all do. Would you guys and ladies stand up and... There are a lot of moving pieces in Pecan Plantation, and without the support of them and the employees that work for them, we would all recognize that. This is a complex place. It's an expensive place. The things that are on that camp process are about $2.9 million. These are $2.9 million of projects that you, the members, have said you want. And our job is to figure out how do we pay for those $2.9 million in projects that members say that they want. Not everybody will get what they want, and our job is to do the best we can to get there. Are there any other questions or comments?
Well, I'd like to add, although, as Ross says, those are things that you wanted, you're not going to get them until you go to the poll and vote, and until we get a mandate from you that says you really want them. And then we will do our best to figure out how to do that.
And if I were to take that $2.9 million, it comes out to about an $8 assessment. $8 to pay for all those things. That's rough. Bob would probably correct me and come out with $8.37. But you know, if we're a big organization, we have the resources there, but it's going to mean that people are going to have to agree that it's important enough for the future of their homes and for the future of living here that they're willing to support some of those things so that we can continue to add the amenities, take care of the things that we have, do the things to maintain this property and to move forward. It's hard to maintain a property when you've got one hand and 2 feet tied behind you. We've got to be able to move forward. If there aren't any other questions or comments, Bob?
Yeah, I do want to mention, as we go through this process, we will try to come up with first of all, prioritize these projects that you have asked for and identify the cost for them, and then give you an opportunity to tell us in a vote which ones you want to fund. Remember that in order for us to pass an assessment increase, which would be the only way we can pay for some of these, we need a 2/3 majority vote. So this super majority vote that was instituted years ago to protect us from the developer, and now is no longer serves that purpose, really makes us very careful on how we consider the projects that we want to approve. So we need to be very thoughtful about that, and we will come to you with a request for an assessment. I would point out also that Fire and EMS is asked for a $15 per month assessment increase, and I would remind you that that's a pass-through for us. We simply collect the fees for the fire and EMS, and then that's their money, and that goes into their budget to maintain their operation. We are well served by a volunteer fire department and a professional emergency medical service program that really gives us a very short response time with professional employees on those ambulances. We're a city of between 7,000 and 8,000 residents. We don't have a good population count, but Granbury is 8,000, approaching 9,000 people. So we're a city comparable in size to Granbury. And I think we have as good or better an EMS service as serves this city of Granbury. It's interesting that Granbury also has a volunteer fire department, and they are considering a vote about whether to change that to a professional paid fire department. Our fire department is still a volunteer fire department, but our EMS personnel are, for the most part, professional and paid. So I'd like to give anybody else on the board an opportunity to, Beverly, did you want to add anything? Okay. Anybody else have anything you want to say? No? Oh my gosh, okay. Well, thank you all so much, very much for coming, and we'll continue to do this.